Great. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Teach, the channel where we talk about all things teaching. My name is Zander. I'll be your host for this session today. And as most of you would know, we are currently in the process of doing a series of interviews with online teachers and also other people that are functioning within the online teaching space. We've been speaking with a few online teachers over the past few weeks, hearing their experience, both the good and the bad. And we've got some exciting interviews coming up within the following weeks. One of the interviews that I really want to emphasize before we get started with today's interview is next week, Monday. We will be interviewing a professional tax practitioner that has significant experience within the South African tax system, and he'll be talking with us specifically on how you as an online teacher should structure yourself in terms of tax within South Africa. So be sure not to miss that session that will happen next week, Monday. And every single Monday, we're doing interviews, getting teachers on to talk to us a little bit more about their experience. And so in today's session, we've got a really, really good story that I'm very excited to share with you all. This is someone that I believe it was in 2022 that I helped him launch his career. We haven't actually seen each other in quite a while, so I'm as excited as all of you to hear his story. But with that said, I want to welcome Anthony on screen. Anthony, so good to see you. How are you?
Nice to see you, Zander. It's been a while. Yeah, I'm very well, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks so much for the time that you've sacrificed to be here. We're really excited to hear your story. So, Anthony, let's jump straight into it. Tell us a bit more about who you were before online teaching. What were you doing? What was your career?
I was actually in financial services, in the financial services industry as a consultant. Generally, what I loved most about the job was the training. I used to do a lot of training on products, life insurance and health insurance and retirement and investments and things like that. And I really enjoyed that part of it. And that became more and more of my job. And then, so it was very, in the corporate world. And when COVID came, obviously there was nobody to train. And I got retrenched and I was unemployed and decided to carry on doing what I really enjoy, and that's teaching. And so I did my TEFL course and obviously had a chat to you as well, and you were a great help, I have to say. And did the TEFL course, applied for some places, and here I am.
Excellent. Well, that's quite a story. So are you still today, COVID is obviously something of the past, are you back into the financial industry, or you're only focusing on teaching now?
I'm only focusing on teaching. I'm a full-time teacher now. I've got now nearly 2 years experience behind me. Lots of ups and downs, lots of learning experiences, and I'm committed to doing this full-time for the future.
Excellent. So, Anthony, tell us a bit about your experience actually completing your TEFL training. What was that like? How long did it take you to complete that?
It actually took me a long time. I was very, very slack. It took me much longer than it should have taken me. It took about 6 months to do, and it should take about 2 or 3 months to do. If you really, really focused on it. I was going through quite a bad patch, so motivation was quite difficult, and being unemployed, it didn't help. So it did take me longer than I thought. Now it's also very lonely to study all by yourself and think about life on the online space. So that was pretty tough. I would say there was probably a low point in my career. I have to say that getting in touch with you through a colleague really made it real that I could actually do this. It made it tangible. When you said, this is what you need to do, that's what you need to do, this is what you need to do, and this is how you do it. really made it real for me. And if it wasn't for that, I think I would probably be one of those people who's done their TEFL courses and then left it behind.
Yeah.
So it was a huge help, Zander. And I'm still learning, but the most importantly, I'm still really enjoying doing it.
Yeah. I think it's a very good point that you just made, Anthony, about sort of the whole course being self-study. Most of the time, you're not in a classroom with some other people that are also sort of aiming to create a career out of this. And I remember I can relate with that. When I was doing my course, I had no one to talk to. I had no one that was sort of a success story of being an online teacher. So I was going through all the modules thinking, am I wasting my time? Is this going to be all in vain? Will I be able to earn any income from this? So I think that's such a good point that you made, and I want to put it out there for other teachers that's why it's important to be part of a community, or at least to have some connections within the industry before you get into it, just to sort of keep motivating you as you're doing the qualification side of things.
Absolutely. When you're starting off, you need all the help that you can possibly get.
Yeah.
Because it's very, very intimidating. It's daunting to be able to do this by yourself. It's something that you've never done before. It was quite a brave experience, I have to say.
I'm curious, Anthony. I remember for me, when I got into online teaching, I believe it was in 2020, at the end of 2020. At the time, I think I was just about to turn 30 years old. And I remember at that time, I had sort of what I called a quarter life crisis, where I was thinking, how am I at the age of 30 making a career change? This sounds ridiculous. Obviously, for you, I can assume that it was much worse. But talk to us a bit about the sort of emotional side of going, like, at my age, making an entire career change, obviously dealing with it not being as voluntary as you would have liked, you being retrenched. What was sort of the inner turmoil like for you making that change?
Well, the timing was actually right, because I was up to here with corporate anyway, especially over the COVID time, where the expectations didn't change, but obviously the whole environment had changed radically. And I found that it was very unsympathetic. So it was, and I turned 50 as well, and I thought, well, if I'm going to make a change, now's the time to change.
Yeah.
And I turned 50 and decided that I'd leave the corporate behind me and try something new. And I don't regret it one bit.
Yeah. No, that's an excellent story, and I've spoken to so many people who have the same experience. Even for some people that maybe after a year or so, they've not made up the income that they made in their previous jobs, but just almost a mental capacity that they've gotten back almost compensates for that. But obviously, as online teachers, we're all hoping and aiming towards earning a good income as well. It shouldn't be an entirely sacrificial thing to take up this industry. So you've made the decision to get into online teaching. Took about 6 months to complete your training. Tell us a bit about, once the training's been completed, and you start applying to schools and platforms, what was that whole experience like?
I applied for a lot of places. I think everybody does. Then there were 3 schools that I got jobs with. And with those 3 schools, I found it difficult to manage a diary with 3 different schools. So that was the one issue. The second issue was that the schools that were paying the most were giving me the least number of appointments. And the ones that were paying the worst were giving me much, much better or much greater number of appointments. And so I had this problem where I was going, well, I would like to earn more, but how am I going to do that? And also, having no experience, I went for the company that paid less, but really, really booked me flat out. They really booked me busy. And that's the route I took. So I didn't take the money route. I took the least money route, but I took the the numbers game. I took the numbers route, and also because I didn't have any experience. I think that the experience has been a wonderful thing as well. I mean, I must have done about 3,000 lessons now. I've done a lot of lessons in 2 years. Yeah,
That is a lot, and I
it's a
love the
lot.
fact, I love your perspective on choosing the school that pays you less but actually gives you a full schedule. Because a conversation that I often have with new teachers coming in is a lot of complaints about not earning a lot of money per hour.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah,
like as a new teacher in your first year, any opportunity, like it's almost like the amount of money you're being paid is sort of it's like a side quest almost, because the
yeah,
value you gain in experience,
exactly.
not only in classroom teaching experience, but also experience in terms of learning how schools function. How do
Yeah,
schools send me lesson materials? What does the booking system look like? How's
yes,
my money being paid into my account? All of those things, I mean, give you so much more value than just the dollar amount that you earn per hour.
absolutely. Especially when you're starting. So I've now I've done my school fees, right?
Yeah,
I've done that. So I'm in the space now where I would like to start my own platform, and that's where I'm going now, to be independent of the companies of the schools, and start my own thing. So I'm on a course currently regarding that, and that's the focus for this year.
that's amazing. And I love, because I speak to so many teachers that have been in it for 2 years, 3 years, and it almost feels like the average person gets stuck at, I work for this school, they pay me money, and I'm satisfied with that. But I love the fact that, I remember you sent me an email saying that you're doing this, I think, going solo or something,
Yes,
course, the online teacher dude, which is
Tim
another
Gascoigne. Yeah,
very, very, very cool guy.
yeah.
Tell me a bit more about what made you think, sort of out of the box, to go, I don't want to keep doing this alone. I want to actually be more independent. What led to that for you?
I think what happened was it was all new and exciting and a lot happening. I wasn't earning very much money, but I was like you just put very well. I was quite happy to take the knock and income to get the experience. I now feel like I've got the experience that I need. It's now time to stretch my wings and try something else. I'm also getting slightly bored. I also did, I mean, in 1 month, I think in November, I did 172 hours, and I don't think I got paid. I don't think I got paid the
Yeah,
correctly for that. And that
yeah,
was a watershed moment for me. And I just said, I've done I've put in a lot of effort, a
yeah.
lot of teaching. I've learned such a lot. It's time now to maybe grow this business and earn what I think I'm worth.
Yeah. Would you say that being in corporate helped you a bit with, like, thinking as an entrepreneur or a businessman, or do you think that's related?
Um, Possibly. I think like the online teacher dude is a lot like you, where he helps you do that kind of thing, and that's the guidance that I need. So I'm not an entrepreneurial person really, but I do want to do this on an ongoing basis. I do want to do this into my future, and I can't see a future doing it with the school that I'm currently with. I can
Yeah.
obviously apply to other schools. I've got my computer spec is good. I've got a green screen behind me. I've got all the equipment. So I could apply to other schools, but I want to definitely try this on my own first and see if I can do it.
Yeah, and that's the problem with schools, is that you're capped on what you could, like, if
Yeah,
you teach the maximum of 40 or 50 hours a week, there's only so much money you can earn. Whereas I
there's a
normally see
limit.
it as schools should be your entry level place, which is great for experience, but not the best way to build your income in the long run, because
No,
they don't offer incentives. Very often they don't give salary increases. If they do, it's very minimal. Whereas, in my opinion, schools are sort of at the bottom in terms of earning potential. The second step, in my opinion, is freelance platforms such as Preply
yeah,
and iTalk in those places, because you actually essentially get to set your hourly rate. And then above that, which I think you are busy with right now, is completely independent. And I've got students at this point in all three of those sections, and it's quite evident that schools fall in the lowest paying bracket. Freelance platforms give you a bit more, but then essentially the private students you get will eventually, because there are no commissions, no middleman, so it just
that's correct. And I've got some students already that were on with my school, but they've now left, and we're still in contact. So I'll hit the ground running with about 6 or 7 new students.
Beautiful.
That already I've set up the fact that that I'm going to be charging, and they're very happy with that. So it's a nice start. And then hopefully we'll grow it organically from there.
That's great work. That's really, really so good. And I remember my first students that I got sort of privately was the first time I realized how much companies or schools are charging students, and what percentage of that actually reaches the teacher. I remember I was working for a school based in China in my first year. I got paid, I think it was about $9 per hour at that school. And then as soon as I started talking to some of the parents, and when some of the parents started contacting me, their minds was like, when they asked me to, like, what's your hourly rate? How much should we pay you? Their minds were at $30 to $40 an hour. And I was just like, you kidding me? And now I have students paying me that kind of money, but just because the middleman is now gone, that money actually reaches my pocket.
Well, let's face it. I think some of these schools are exploitative, and they don't really mind if you resign and leave, because there's 10 more people to fill your boot. So, it's that kind of environment. It's that environment. You need to understand that, and not be disappointed by the fact that you are merely a commodity, and it's easy come, easy go. So get the experience, enjoy what you're doing. Don't worry about the money until you've got the experience, and then you can start looking at other companies, start looking at your own platform, start looking at other opportunities to earn the income.
100%. I would love to, again, maybe have you on in 6 months to see how the going solo is working, but it sounds like you've got a good strategy in mind. So, Anthony, you mentioned earlier that initially you applied to or worked for 3 different schools. Which schools did you work for initially, and which one did you eventually decided to sort of dedicate most of your time to?
There's a company called AGOX, which is based in Japan. The AGOX. Then there was iTutor Group, which I think you introduced me to. And then there's EF, which is called Education First, which is one of the biggest ones in the world, I think. They do a lot of things. That's who I eventually ended up with. And it's been a fine relationship. I mean, there's a lot of rules and regulations, and if you keep your nose clean and do that, then it's fine. But they have absolutely booked me. I cannot complain about the amount of bookings that I get. I really get a lot of bookings. And but I'm at the point now where I've had enough of that. It's boring. I've got to spread my wings or do something else, which I won't do. I'm definitely going to carry on going solo.
Yeah, for sure. But I think I always like to sort of mention those names, because I think quite a hot topic recently has been the fact that South Africans are really having a hard time finding jobs, which I never bought into that. I just believe that, and I've sort of tried and tested this many times to the point where I've sort of narrowed it down that for any company that you can find online, as a South African, you probably need to apply to between 11 and 13 companies to get one interview. So it's for us as South Africans, just more important to find the companies actually hiring. And I think the 3 that you mentioned, Education First, good to know that they're hiring South Africans. iTutor Group, I don't believe that they exist anymore, but they've got I don't think they are around anymore, no. Yeah, but they do have a sister company called Tutor ABC, which is based in Taiwan. And I actually received an email. I used to be a teacher with them 2 years ago and received an email last week inviting me to reactivate my account and if I would like to teach for them. So that's again another company that seems like they're open to hiring more teachers and hiring South Africans. And then IGOX, the other one that you mentioned, is also a company that I know is hiring South Africans. None of these companies will pay you top dollar, but again, if you're a teacher starting out, or even if you just have 5 or 10 hours a week that you would like to fill, instead of waste time sitting at home, they might be a good option for anyone.
I did apply to some other places and got interviews and jobs, but my computer spec was out. So when you're starting out, make sure that you get a computer do some research in terms of your computer and your camera, and get the right thing. Don't go cheap and get the wrong thing, because it's definitely going to impact on your job search.
What a good point. And do you still remember which parts of the specs of your computer did they have issue with? Was it camera, processor?
It was the processor, and it had to be 5 gigs. 5 gigs. What 5i? I'm not very technically. i5.
Yeah.
i5. But I needed an 8 gig RAM to run the things, and obviously I needed storage, which wasn't that big an issue. It was the RAM, because to run the programs. And my spec, when I started out, I got a really mid-range computer, and I now have the top gaming computer. So it's what I need. Yeah.
Great. Anthony, tell us a bit about maybe one highlight, one low point in you mentioned obviously the getting qualified was quite a low point because you were really isolated. But as you started getting into teaching more lessons, you mentioned you've got about 3,000 hours taught now, which is incredible. Share with us maybe one highlight, one low point in your career so far.
A highlight is definitely getting the TEFL thing done. That was a highlight, because then it was a commitment, and I didn't have anything else to go to. But getting that qualification really was a high point, because I didn't believe that I could do it. I was just studying, and I was really battling to study that stuff. But that was a high point. Getting an actual job, that was a high point, because I didn't believe that it could be that. I didn't believe in myself, put it that way. And once I had the job, then I was thrust into the limelight, call it that, and had to do it. And it didn't take me very long to get into the swing of things, maybe because I enjoyed doing it anyway. But that was a high point. A low point, I can't think of many low points except doing a lot of hours and not getting paid enough. But that's just a normal thing. And I'm at the stage now where that matters, where it didn't matter before, and that's why I need to move on.
Yeah.
So not many low points, I have to say. I love the flexibility. A lot of companies don't offer the flexibility that EF does. Some other companies that I applied for and got interviews for, it was an 8 to 5 job, and I cannot do that. I've got a special needs child, and I need to have flexibility. So the flexibility is a huge thing for me as well. But not many low points. A couple of high points, but otherwise I thoroughly enjoy what I do. It's great fun.
That's very good to hear. How many hours on average do you teach weekly right now?
I allocate 9 hours a day in the weekdays, and then I allocate 6 hours on a Saturday. So that's a lot of hours. Yeah.
And your book, like, are you generally fully booked for all those hours, or about 80 to 90%?
It's about 80 to 90%. Yeah, we're going through January is quite a funny month. People are still getting into things and whatever. So January was a bit funny, but I think as we get into the year, it'll fill up again.
Yeah.
And so I'm not concerned about the bookings. It's always been very good.
Yeah. Well, that's impressive, that one school can offer you basically a full schedule. I've not
Yeah.
met many schools that are able to do that. So shout out to Education First for being able to do that. And that shows that they're obviously growing as a company. And
They're huge. They really are big. Yeah.
that's incredible. Maybe one final question before we wrap up, Anthony. You mentioned obviously you're now in the process of transitioning from teaching for schools more towards independent, but any maybe additional or more specific goals that you have, that you've set out in your mind before the end of 2024? This is where I'd like to be in my teaching career.
Yeah, by the end of 2024, I must have my own. I will have my own platform, and at least 9 students. So that's where I'm going with that. So it's very simple. I have to choose curricula. I have to choose various other things. I like the fact that you're getting a tax specialist in next week, because that's something that needs to be dealt with as well, especially if I'm doing this long term. It needs to be dealt with. So that's a good point. But yeah, that's my goal. My goal is very simple for this year, is to obviously I will gradually go into my own thing as I leave EF. It's not going to be a resignation and off you go.
Yeah.
But that's going to take some juggling. But I'm pretty certain that it can be done within this year.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Listen, Anthony, before this session, I mean, as I mentioned in the beginning, you and I haven't spoken online for quite some time. I wasn't sure what this story would be, but it's stories like yours that just make me go, this is why we do what we do. And it gives me so much courage and excitement to see what this career change meant for you, how it's given you sort of the mental capacity in terms of the flexibility of time and income and things, and the fact that you're still dreaming after 2 years about where you want to go next. So I would love to, have a lot more questions for you, but I think in about 6 months, I would love to check in with you again. And I'm sure if any of our listeners wants to maybe just get some encouragement or advice from you, we could maybe put you in touch with each other. I think stories like yours mean a lot to listeners and people considering making this career. So once again, Anthony, thanks so much for your time. I really
Zander, I'd like to thank you as well, because you were really the catalyst in this whole thing. And if it wasn't for you, I don't know where I'd be right now in terms of this career choice. So thank you very much for your input.
No worries. I mean, it's been a privilege, and especially with a success story, it makes it worth it 100%. So,
okay,
thanks.
Great.
Great. Okay. Anthony, well, thanks again. Thanks for everyone listening. If you're watching the recording of this session and you maybe want to reach out to Anthony, feel free to let me know. My email address will be in the description of this video. Just a reminder for everyone, next week, we're going to get some good tax advice within the South African context, specifically for you as an online teacher. So be sure not to miss that. And then we'll see each other again next week, Monday. Have a good week, everyone. Thanks, Anthony.
Bye-bye.
See you. Bye.
Cheers.